universal ratification and implementation of the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances. So before we request Rodrigo, our secretary, to welcome us, let me give you some technical information. This webinar is live on Facebook. In this webinar, for lack of resources, we can accommodate only 100 persons, but those who cannot enter the link can watch us on Facebook. We would like to request everyone except for the speaker, to mute themselves while one is speaking. And for questions on presentations, we would like to write them down in the chat room to be taken during the open forum. And due to time constraints, we would like the questions to be written and be answered by the concerned speaker during the open forum. Since our second speaker, Mrs. Estela de Carlotto, would need to leave after her speech, questions can be asked to her directly after her presentation. There will be translation from Spanish to English for Mrs. Carlotto and Mr. Garavito Fernandez. And this is a 2-hour conference on enforced disappearances in the world. To ensure maximum dissemination of information, we are recording the conference. To welcome us in this event, I would like to call on the Secretary of the International Coalition Against Enforced Disappearances, Rodrigo Gomez Tortosa. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. First, I will speak in English and next in Spanish. Primero hablaré en inglés y luego en español. Dear expert, colleagues, and friends, I have the honor to welcome you on behalf of the Secretary of the International Coalition Against Enforced Disappearance, this high-level panel in commemoration of the International Day of the Victim of Enforced Disappearance. The International Day, the Victim of Enforced Disappearance, was established by the United Nations on December 2010 in the General Assembly by the Resolution 65/209. We acknowledge that this day has its real origin in the work of family members who were fighting to find the disappeared people in Latin America, guided the FADEFEM since 1981. About 25 years later, International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance was achieved thanks to her coordinated work. At ICAED, we are very happy to bring together international experts, family members, and human rights activists from around the world for reflection on the forcing disappearing people. This panel is part of one of the main objectives of the coalition, which had to do with offering its members the opportunity to exchange experience and information, communicate different skills and knowledge, coordinate plan, make effective use of resources, and identify and carry out possible change in action. Furthermore, ICAED seeks to maximize the impact of the activity carried out by the member in favor of a ratification and effective implementation of the International Convention. Today, we have the responsibility to continue working so that never again is a really. To conclude, I would like to take the opportunity to express my very special gratitude to the Abuelas and Madre Plaza de Mayo Línea Fundadora, as to each organization that from ICAED fight against enforced disappearance. Thank you very much. And now, in Spanish, bueno, ahora en español para los compañeros y compañeras de América Latina y Europa, estimados expertos, expertas, colegas, compañeros, compañeras, amigos y amigas. Tengo el honor de darles la bienvenida en nombre de la Secretaría de la Coalición Internacional contra la Desaparición Forzada, ICAED, a este panel de alto nivel en conmemoración por el Día Internacional del Detenido Desaparecido. El Día Internacional del Detenido Desaparecido fue establecido por las Naciones Unidas el 21 de diciembre de 2010 en la Asamblea General por Resolución 65-209. Como todos sabemos, este día tiene su origen real en los familiares que luchaban para encontrar a las personas desaparecidas en América Latina, unidos en FEDEFAM desde 1981. 25 años después, la Coalición Internacional para la Protección de todas las personas a la desaparición forzada fue lograda gracias al trabajo coordinado en todo el continente. Desde ICAED estamos muy felices de reunir hoy expertos internacionales familiares y amigos que trabajan respecto a la ratificación por la Convención de la Protección de todas las personas de desaparición forzada. Estos objetivos resultan fundamentales, ya que en América Latina, África y Asia hemos sufrido la desaparición forzada de personas como una práctica sistemática que golpeó durante las dictaduras en nuestra región. Hoy en día tenemos la responsabilidad de continuar trabajando para que nunca más sea una realidad. Para finalizar, aprovecho para expresar mi especial agradecimiento a las abuelas y madres de Plaza de Mayo, línea fundadora, a los familiares de toda América, Asia, Europa, que están reunidos en diferentes organizaciones que son parte de ICAED. Como bien decimos en América Latina, detenidos, desaparecidos, presentes ahora y siempre. Muchas gracias y bienvenidos a todos y a todas. Thanks, Aileen.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Now, without much ado, we would like to welcome our next speaker, Mr. Mohamed Ayat. He is the chairperson of the United Nations Committee on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances. So now, Mr. Ayat, you have the floor.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Dear honorable all, first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this very important online forum. I salute and greet all of you. And if you allow me, I would like to extend a special greeting to the president of the Abuelas de la Plaza de Mayo, Mrs. Estrella Carlota. I had already had the pleasure of meeting her in person in Argentina, Costa Rica, and Morocco. She is an activist of great caliber. We will never thank her enough for her marvelous achievements so far. Enforced disappearances is a human rights violation criminalized by the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. It is also a crime against humanity when perpetrated in a widespread and systematic manner. You have asked me to say a word about the situation of enforced disappearances in the world. This is not an easy task. In fact, the mechanisms of protection against this phenomenon, whether national, regional, or international, can only see the visible part of the iceberg of enforced disappearances. The rest is never reported to these bodies, mainly because those who have an interest in denouncing them are not always in a position to do so. This is frequently part of the atrocious suffering endured by the relatives of the disappeared persons. Yet, there is, in general, a trend that could be highlighted. The daily functioning of the mechanism for protection against enforced disappearance tends to show that the phenomenon spares no region of the world. After the Second World War, until the 90s, it remarkably increased. The phenomenon has remarkably increased. It was notably very frequent in Latin America during the dictatorial regimes during the 70s and the 80s, the early 80s. In Argentina, for example, more than 30,000 people were reported missing. Not to mention the children who were extorted from their parents to be illegally adopted, sometimes very, very far from their country of origin. However, it's erroneous to think that enforced disappearances are a Latin American phenomenon, which doesn't spare, because there is a growing awareness that it's a phenomenon which that does not spare any region of the world. It generally flourishes in contexts characterized by violence, especially during national or international armed conflicts. It is also used by dictatorships to get rid of their political opponents. Alongside these classical types, new forms of enforced disappearances are emerging. Enforced disappearances are nowadays more and more in the context of immigration and human trafficking. Moreover, some states try to justify the use of enforced disappearances by the fight against terrorism. In fact, under the terms of the UN Convention, the protection of all persons from enforced disappearances cannot be derogated from. It's an absolute right. Therefore, even a person suspected of being involved in terrorist activity, terrorist act, he or she continues to enjoy human rights, which includes the right of a fair trial and the right not to be subjected to enforced disappearance. I recall that it's difficult to know the exact figure of the enforced disappearances which are occurring around the world. Nevertheless, we do have some small windows, I would say, facing the emergent top of the enforced disappearances iceberg. Among those windows, the Convention on Enforced Disappearance allows the victim or any interested person to submit an urgent request to report on the alleged occurrence of an enforced disappearance. This procedure is currently operating 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. In quantitative terms, the number of requests of urgent action registered by the Committee on the UN Convention on Enforced Disappearances has increased from 11 at the end of 2014 to almost I would say 950 to date, around 950 to date. This is a considerable increase. Currently, the two countries with the most urgent action requests have about 350 to 400 urgent action. The committee pays special attention to them, with the protection of victims at the center of its concern. In the same vein, it is confirmed that since the creation of the working group on enforced and involuntary disappearances in 1980, this group had dealt with around 59,000 allegations of disappearances from 109 countries. Of all these cases, only some were like elusive, at least are no longer cases, open cases. 46,000 cases concerning 92 states have yet to be proceeded or processed. In addition, in 2019, the working group on enforced disappearances had transmitted 768 new cases of enforced disappearances to 40 states. Of these cases, 177 were transmitted under this it's urgent procedure, because the working group has also an urgent procedure. But once again, these figures reflect only a tiny part of the reality, that which may have been brought to the attention to the UN Committee of the Convention of Enforced Disappearances, or the Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearances. Many cases are not brought to the attention of these two bodies because of the pressure exerted by states on families not to do so. Forgive me for being a little bit long, but in conclusion, I would like to emphasize the importance of the work undertaken by civil society in the fight of prevention of enforced disappearances. And I recall the pioneering role that human rights NGOs have played in bringing this convention into being and making it a reality. I also recall that we need you to consolidate our campaign, the campaign to increase the number of ratification of the convention that has so far 10 years age. We are still, after 10 years old, we have still only 63 member states. Through the organization of this forum, you continue to be faithful to our common ideal, the fight relentlessly against the horrible crime of disappearance. We owe you our gratitude and recognition. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me, for your patience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muhammad Ayat, the chairperson of the Committee on Enforced Disappearances. Ahora nuestra próxima ponente necesita no introducción. Desde un país que ha experienciado la noche oscura de los desaparecidos durante la dictadura de Argentina, nuestra ponente, como dije, necesita no introducción porque ella es muy conocida internacionalmente como campeón de la causa para los desaparecidos, no solamente en Argentina, sino también en el resto del mundo. Su hija, Laura Estela Carlotto, desapareció cuando estaba embarazada en Buenos Aires en 1977. Estela tenía la suerte de reunir con su grandchild, nieto, después de 36 años de lucha para la verdad y justicia. Now let us welcome Señora Estela de Carlotto, the president of the Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo of Argentina. Señora Estela, you have the floor.
Hola, queridos amigos del mundo. Estoy muy emocionada y muy agradecida de haber sido invitada a participar con ustedes para recordar a los héroes de nuestra historia por el Día Internacional del Desaparecido. Es una historia muy triste, una historia que hay que revertir a futuro, una historia que nos une a todo el mundo porque si bien en Latinoamérica sufrimos un deterioro tremendo, casi todos los países, por tener militantes políticos opositores a esas dictaduras, el mundo también sufre, y aún hoy en día, problemas de represión y tortura y desapariciones. Esta lucha comienza, en lo que a mí respecta, como bien se dijo, por la desaparición forzada de la mayor de mis 4 hijos, Laura Estela, de 23 años, embarazada. Ella y su compañero fueron secuestrados en noviembre de 1977. Yo era directora de una escuela primaria, era mi vocación de toda la vida. Me jubilé, me retiré, porque previo a esa desaparición mi esposo también, buscando a sus hijas, fue secuestrado por 25 días con un deterioro permanente de su salud. Cuando dicen ¿por qué salimos? Yo digo que las madres y las mujeres, que en general, y sobre todo el que es maestro y tiene niños y los educa con amor, tiene adentro una leona que cuando le tocan un hijo saca sus garras y sale a luchar. Tenemos ya 43 años de lucha en nuestro país, la Argentina. Y vamos a seguir felizmente con esta, la más larga democracia de la historia que estamos viviendo. Imperfecta, pero con el voto popular y la aceptación del respeto a ese voto. Abuelas, junto a madres, familiares, y luego nacen los hijos de los desaparecidos, tenemos una estrecha unidad en acciones permanentes dentro y fuera del país. Pero Abuelas tiene una doble misión, que comenzamos allá en el 77, juntándonos sin saber qué hacer, con temores pero con valentía, y aunque nos costara la vida, comenzamos a salir al mundo, viajando por toda Latinoamérica. Por eso FEDEFAM, que ha sido un hito para todo lo que ha sido la lucha de Latinoamérica, nos acompañó siempre. Y también por Europa y todos los países posibles del mundo. Porque en Argentina la dictadura decía que eso no era cierto, había que demostrarlo. Y por supuesto, en el mundo y sobre todo en Naciones Unidas, en la OEA en Washington, en la Cruz Roja Internacional, en Amnistía Internacional y en muchos otros, como el Consejo Mundial de Iglesias, hemos recurrido para que nos reconozcan, nos cuiden y nos enseñen qué hacer. Todavía seguimos aprendiendo. Por eso no hemos bajado los brazos en estos 43 años. Cada organismo de los que he nombrado, que somos los afectados directos, porque somos un grupo de 13, pero los afectados directos son madres, abuelas, familiares e hijos, estamos en permanente vigencia o vigilia de lo que pueda aportarse para que estas historias no se repitan. Nuestro país tuvo la primera dictadura en 1930. En ese año nací, voy a cumplir 90 años. No lo siento esos 90 años, me siento joven y con muchos deseos de seguir trabajando. Y mientras pueda, aún con bastón, como digo, voy a seguir afrontando los desniveles ideológicos que existen en nuestro país. Porque hay opiniones realmente muy dolorosas que aún niegan esta situación, la deterioran y quieren que dejemos de molestar. Vamos a seguir molestando, pero siempre con el respeto debido. No es necesario ladrar o gritar para ser entendidas. Abuelas tiene la dulzura de por medio porque estamos buscando nietos. Alrededor de 500 es la estimación que pensamos que se han llevado los represores de la última, y así tiene que ser, dictadura cívico-militar. Bueno, esta lucha nos ha llevado a conseguir la ayuda de todo el mundo. Cuando conseguimos instalar un Banco Nacional de Datos Genéticos, que es único en el mundo para ese fin, que es con la ciencia más absoluta reconocer la identidad del posible nieto para no equivocar, por supuesto, que eso sería realmente un error imperdonable. Y tenemos paciencia, 36 años realmente, sí. Fue mi búsqueda colectiva con mis amigas, mis compañeras, las abuelas, para encontrar a mi nieto. Y al volver él, volvió mi hija Laura un poquito y me dio más fuerza para seguir buscando los nietos que faltan. Hemos creado muchos espacios de trascendencia. Por eso tenemos un equipo, abuelas, que antes éramos unas señoras solitas caminando y pensando qué más podemos hacer, a quién tenemos que hablar. Nos equivocamos mucho. Ciertos sectores de la Iglesia Católica nos engañaron, nos frustraron. Hubo otros héroes que hasta le costó la vida ser católicos con fe y esperanza. Y bueno, en esa trayectoria fuimos armando nuestra personalidad institucional. Tenemos 13 equipos técnicos, o sea que ya nosotros dirigimos la institución, pero como ya somos muy poquitas, les cuento mi edad, otras ya no están, otras no pueden venir, somos muy poquitas, ya nuestra comisión directiva está integrada por nietos recuperados, familiares o nietos que buscan a sus hermanos. O sea que la juventud ha ingresado para darnos su fuerza nueva, sus nuevas ideas. Pero yo a veces le digo con una sonrisa, pero con la verdad segura y con el dedito de maestra levantado, que mientras exista una abuela, va a mandar la abuela, va a dirigir la abuela. Pero eso es una mención cariñosa que les hacemos. Bueno, ellos nos ayudan y estos equipos técnicos de abogados, genetistas, de prensa y difusión, de acercamiento, de recepción, en fin, estamos permanentemente en unidad y en estos tiempos de pandemia, en que tenemos que quedarnos en nuestras casas para cuidarnos de este virus enemigo del mundo, trabajamos, no estamos de vacaciones, estamos trabajando. No hay que perder un minuto para buscar los nietos. En algún lugar del mundo deben estar. Por eso seguimos pregonando en el mundo entero la búsqueda, la advertencia de lo que puede pasar en algunos lugares y nos solidarizamos con todos los países del mundo que pasan por la misma situación. Estando en Naciones Unidas, se me acercaron la gente de Sri Lanka, queriendo saber cómo no ayudarlos. Y así como ellos, muchos otros espacios, y sobre todo en Latinoamérica, visitando los países hermanos como Guatemala, porque Argentina es un país que tiene un mérito de que hemos avanzado en todo lo que sea la planificación para esas 3 palabras, memoria, verdad y justicia, no se borren y sean una realidad. Muchos desean que olvidemos. Jamás. ¿Qué madre olvida a un hijo? Esa llaga de esa pérdida se lleva siempre en el corazón, pero trabajando, y trabajando con paz, con alegría, y sobre todo con amor por el otro, se puede soportar esa llaga, se duele menos, pero se ayuda y se hace actos de generosidad hacia el otro. El mundo entero tiene que unirse para que esto no se repita. Y si hoy siguen estas desapariciones, todos tenemos que unidos combatirlas, de la manera en que podamos, defendiéndonos para que no se sufra más que por pensar distintos somos enemigos. Podemos convivir en una tierra sin diferencias o con diferencias, pero sabiendo que somos todos dueños de esa tierra que estamos pisando. En este día especial del detenido desaparecido, mi honra a todos los que dejaron la vida por su patria. En nuestra Argentina, 30.000 personas fueron secuestradas, llevadas a centros clandestinos de detención. No eran sitios con visibilidad, sino clandestinos, donde bajo tortura querían que denunciaran a sus compañeros. Prefirieron morir antes de hacerlo. Luego esos cuerpos no sabemos dónde están. Los estamos buscando. Y a los nietos también se los apropiaron. A los minutos de nacer en esas cárceles, miles eran esas cárceles que poblaban el país, que podían estar en cualquier lugar cercano sin que nos diéramos cuenta. Y robarle el bebé a la parturienta y luego matarla era el objetivo. Laura, mi hija, fue asesinada 2 meses después que le robaron el niño. Le dijeron que me lo iban a dar y ella pensó que nada de eso era cierto porque estaba por 9 meses dentro de ese lugar siniestro. Tuvimos el privilegio, triste, de que nos entregaran su cuerpo y pudiéramos hacer el velatorio y, sobre todo, llevar una flor a su tumba. Y en esa tumba yo prometí no descansar un solo día para justicia por ella y sus compañeros y para encontrarle su bebé. Ya encontré su bebé, pero todavía no hay justicia por los compañeros. Por eso, queridos amigos, voy a seguir junto a ustedes, unido a ustedes y a todos los del mundo. Veo en esas caritas a Morris, un querido hijo, a María Adela, querida compañera, a, esta señora amorosa, Fátima, que también su compañero dio la vida, a Ravena, querido amigo de toda la vida que hoy nos representa, y no sé, por ahí está Mignone, que no sé si es la que yo conozco o es otra Mignone, querido hombre que sembró la justicia desde su grupo político durante la dictadura. Yo no sé si el rostro que veo es de ella, Giama, ¿no? Ah, me parecía, querido amigo, pero no está tu nombre, ella. Bueno, miren qué alegría tengo hoy de verlos y de otros que no conozco y que están ahí con nosotros. Sigamos juntos, no bajemos los brazos. El amor triunfa. Muchas gracias y hasta pronto.
Muchísimas gracias, señora Estela. El ejemplo de ustedes nos anima mucho en esta lucha común, en esta lucha tan larga para conseguir la verdad, la justicia, la reparación y las garantías de no repetición. Muchísimas gracias y ahora queremos escuchar el sumario de María Adela en inglés for the English speaking participants.
Está sin audio, María Adela.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay. Estela said she felt quite moved and very grateful because of this meeting. This meeting has the purpose of remembering the heroes of the history, a history that must be changed. She remembered she began her fight when her elder daughter was disappeared, Laura. Afterwards, she said that she recovered her nephew. She recovered Ignacio, her nephew, and it was like recovering Laura itself. She worked as a teacher, she was a director, but she retired because her husband became ill because of all the repression they suffered. Why the grandmothers appeared? She asked why the grandmother appears, because they have inside an actual lioness, and those lionesses went out to look for their children, to look for their grandchildren, and to look for justice. They have a 46 years fight on behalf of truth, justice, and the recovery of their grand sisters and granddaughters and grandsons. They work together, the grandmothers work together with the whole of the Argentine organisms, but especially with the organisms of victims, of direct victims, that are grandmothers, mothers of Plaza de Mayo, the founding line, relatives of disappeared because of political reasons, and the ones who appeared afterwards, 25 years ago, the sons, the children of the disappeared, the nieces of the grandmothers. This is a group that is absolutely engaged with that fight. In the 77, when they got stronger, when the grandmothers got stronger, they went out of the country. They went to visit and to present, to introduce their denouncings in International Red Cross, in the World Council of Churches, in OEA, no, the organization, the American organization, in the United Nations, in every organization, huge organization who could help their search, their fight, and could teach them how to better work. And they learned a lot. They learned how to look for the signs of identity in the blood studies. And that was, they reached that, that real triumph for all the world. When the first dictatorship bursted in Argentina, she was born. She is about to be 90 years old. There is the grandmothers may be old, but they go on fighting and looking for their grandchildren. Perhaps some people say, we are bothering, Estela said. Yes, they don't want to bother, but they will go on, perhaps bothering a little, but reaching their objectives. They are looking for about 500 of children, of grandchildren, and they nowadays they can be directing the group, the association, because of their experiences and they always remember, pay attention, we are the directors. They have 13 staffs, 13 teams with specialties in that searching. It is great. Estela didn't say, but it is great to visit their house. They feel and show their solidarity even under pandemic with all the countries in the world that suffer the enforced disappeared. And we don't doubt about their engagement. She said, we in Argentina have been lucky because we have planified the conditions and the structures to look for memory, or to go through memory looking for truth and justice. I think it is the resume of what Stella said.
Thank you very much, Maria Adela, for the summary,
welcome.
for the very good summary that that you made. Now, I would like to go straight to the next speaker from an organization that I belong to, an organization of torture survivors. It's called the Torture Abolition and Survivor Support Coalition, based in Washington, D.C. Our next speaker is an indefatigable campaigner against torture and against enforced disappearances. We have worked together for a number of years in Washington, D.C., in Geneva, in Nepal, and the Torture Abolition and Survivor Support Coalition are tasked as members who are torture survivors. Many of them are also with us now in this conference from various parts of the world, most of whom are from Africa. Our speaker will focus her presentation on enforced disappearances in Rwanda and Libya. Now I would like to welcome our next speaker, Ms. Andrea Baron. Andrea, you have the floor.
So, yes, hi everybody. Most of the work that we do in TASK, which is committed to ending the practice of torture all over the world and supporting survivors of torture, their families and communities. I work closely with survivors to influence US policy on human rights, especially in Africa, and on issues related to asylum. Most of what I do is collaborate directly with the survivors to meet with representatives from the United States Congress and the Department of State. We're also interested in broader human rights issues all over the world, which is why I'm so pleased to be at this conference commemorating International Day for Victims of Disappearances. Today, I'm going to focus on enforced disappearances in two African countries, Rwanda and Libya. One has a very strong, tightly controlled government that has been in power for 20 years. In the other, two regional governments, as well as tribes, factions, religious extremists, and foreign proxies, are all competing for power in a violent and chaotic environment. When we hear the word Rwanda mentioned, what often comes to mind is a horrific genocide that took place in this small African country in 1994, where Hutu extremists systematically executed nearly 1 million Tutsis and moderate Hutus. Second, people think about the so-called Rwandan economic miracle, how the economy of this poor African country has grown 6 to 8% every year since 2002. They may think about the tall blue glass office buildings in the capital, Kigali, about a sparkling new convention center, and the cash-free smart cards people use on buses. What they may not know about is that Rwanda is following the Chinese model of economic development, economic growth without human rights or democracy. Anyone who opposes the ruling party, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, headed by President Paul Kagame, could be subject to arrest, torture, enforced disappearance, or assassination. In 2017, Kagame was elected with 98.8% of the vote. Who knows what will happen to the 1.2% of the people who did not vote for him? They could be next in line for assassination or enforced disappearance. China boasts how it has lifted 600 million people out of poverty. Similarly, Rwanda brags about increased life expectancy and primary school enrollment. Like many authoritarian regimes, China labels its opponents as, quote, terrorists. It has arrested over 13,000 Uyghur Muslims over the last 5 years and imprisoned over 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps in the far west of China. Kagame also labels his political opponents terrorists. This is what happened to a young man named Venant Abayasenga, who disappeared because he was a member of an opposition party called Dalfa Umurinzing, a major opposition political party. This new party stands for Sustainable Economic Development, Human Rights, and Democracy. But following the Chinese model, Kagame is promoting development without democracy, without human rights, without the right to criticize the government, and without freedom of press. Mr. Abayasenga was in prison for 2 years, along with other members of his party. He was released on January 20th of this year, along with other members of his party. Following his release, he talked with a reporter about being tortured by police. Then 6 months later, just this past June, he was disappeared on his way to buy mobile phone credit. Nobody has heard from him since. Another man who was disappeared is Eugene Ndereyimana, also part of an opposition party. His wife, Jocelyn, told CNN that local government officials considered him an enemy, and they constantly looked for ways to harass him, like making it difficult for him to get credit from the bank. Then in July 2019, he was on his way to a political meeting and never returned. His wife said, quote, "I have lost all hope of ever seeing him alive, and the children are always asking where their father went." Human Rights Watch said, quote, "Enforced disappearances are not new in Rwanda. It has kept track of what it called the government's, quote, persistent efforts to silence critics and perceived political opponents in recent years through arbitrary arrests, threats, and enforced disappearances." The Central African Director of Human Rights Watch said that cases like these are the latest in a long line of suspicious disappearances, politically motivated arrests, and unlawful detentions in Rwanda. 26 years ago, Paul Kagame invaded Rwanda to end the genocide against members of the Tutsi minority, like him, and moderate Hutus. Today, Kagame makes no distinction between Hutus and Tutsis. He will punish people of any ethnicity who threaten his absolute rule. The divide in Rwanda is no longer between Hutus and Tutsis, it's between supporters and opponents of the Kagame regime. And his regime is a new threat to democracy and human rights. Now I want to talk briefly about Libya, a very different situation. Since the fall of Libya's longtime dictator, Muammar Gaddafi, in 2011, Libya has been in turmoil. The country is now divided along regional, tribal, ideological, and religious lines. 2 different governments are competing for power. One is based in Tripoli, the Libyan capital, and is recognized by the United Nations and supported by most Western powers, Turkey and Qatar. Challenging the Tripoli government is the self-proclaimed Libyan National Army, or LNA, based in the eastern Syrian city of Benghazi. It is headed by General Khalifa Haftar, a warlord who used to be on the CIA payroll. Haftar is supported by the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Russia, and France. In 2019, probably by forces aligned with the Haftar Libyan National Army. She was trained as a psychologist and conducted research on rape as a weapon of war during the 2011 Libyan civil war. She documented over 300 rapes, mostly carried out by government forces. In 2014, Siham was elected as a member of parliament. She was described by her families and friends as a courageous woman, never afraid to speak her mind in her support of peace, human rights, and the new democratic Libya. She even took the risk of criticizing the brutal warlord Khalifa Haftar in a television interview. It was shortly after that she was seized by armed men from Haftar's forces. Her family has no idea what happened to her. both the United Nations Support Mission in Libya and human rights organizations have called on Haftar to release Siham. The statement made by the UN mission was the first time it spoke out against enforced disappearances in Libya and against, quote, silencing the voices of women in decision-making positions. Of course, the LNA has claimed it was not involved in Siham's disappearance. Now, we must continue to condemn these disappearances as long as they continue, regardless of the fact that militias and tribes continue to battle each other in Libya. And also, I hope that when you hear the word Rwanda from now on, you won't just think about the genocide and President Paul Kagame bragging about economic progress in the country. You'll also think about his repressive government and all the people who have been disappeared because they dared to criticize a man who was once a freedom fighter and has now become a virtual dictator. So I guess I'll just take a few minutes. I really didn't, to try to translate a little bit in Spanish. Voy a tratar un poquito traducir en el español, pero no solamente como un sumario. Entonces, yo hablé que trabajo con la organización que representa sobrevivientes de tortura aquí en Washington, D.C., pero nosotros también estamos tratando luchar en contra de la tortura, desaparecidos, forzados en todo el mundo. Yo hoy voy a hablar solamente sobre dos países. Uno es Ruanda y el otro es Libia. Son dos países muy, muy diferentes. Cuando hablamos la palabra Ruanda, mucha gente piensa del genocidio, donde mataron casi 1 millón de personas del tribu Tutsi, y otra cosa piensa del milagro económico en Ruanda, pero mucha gente no piensa, oh, Ruanda también es un país muy represivo, que tiene un señor que es como un dictador que se llama Paul Kagame, que está en poder 20 años. En 2017, él fue elegido con 98.8% del voto. Entonces, como China ahora ayudó más de 600,000 personas que no son de la pobreza, pero China también llama terrorista los, no sé cómo se dice en español, los musulmanes en el oeste de China, que nosotros decimos en inglés Uyghur, que están en casi cárceles. A la misma vez, Kagame también llama a los opositores terroristas. Entonces, hablé un poquito de un señor que se llama Venant Abisenga, que fue desaparecido, porque él viene de un partido político que critica a Kagame. Kagame quiere desarrollo económico sin democracia, sin derechos humanos, donde la gente no puede criticar al gobierno. Entonces, después hablé de otro, que lo que yo quiero que ustedes recuerden de la discusión sobre Ruanda, y cuando escucha la palabra Ruanda, no piensa solamente del genocidio y milagro económico, que es muy triste que una persona, Paul Kagame, que luchó en contra del genocidio, se cambió y ahora es un dictador. Es muy triste que pasó eso, pero eso es lo que pasó. Después quiero hablar muy rápidamente lo que está pasando en Libia. Libia es una situación caótica. Desde se cayó Muammar Gaddafi en 2011, hay dos gobiernos, uno está en Trípoli, otro está en Benghazi, y los dos están cometiendo desaparecidos forzados. Es una situación muy, muy difícil allá. Y quiero terminar solamente repitiendo, cuando escucho la palabra Ruanda, pienso también de un dictador y no solamente del genocidio. Y también en Libia hay una guerra civil, y después, pero a la misma vez, también que cuando no se termina la guerra, a la misma vez tenemos que luchar contra de desaparecidos forzados. Lo siento con mi español.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for the insightful presentations on Libya and Rwanda, despite the difficulties that we had. I would like to call on our next speaker. She is a doctor of education, a member of the Secular Order of Discalced Carmelites, a retired educator, journalist, now a full-time farmer and a human rights defender. She is a mother. She is the mother of Filipino disappeared Jonas Burgos, who disappeared in 2007. Let us welcome Dr. Edita Burgos from the Free Jonas Burgos movement of the Philippines. Mrs. Burgos, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day to all. Thank you, ICAED, for organizing this webinar in this time of pandemic where our voices and efforts are constrained by protocols of health and safety. Amidst the threats of COVID-19, we are most grateful for a venue where we can be heard outside of our quarantine cells. It is ironic that now that we are confined and literally physically restrained, we have the means to be heard beyond our shores. Therefore, thank you, ICAED, for the initiative, and thank you, participants, for being here. Allow me to link arms with you as I talk. I am guided by Romans 12:2. Do not conform yourselves to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. I am 77 years old, limited by practically nil technology and internet signal. I am in an isolated mountainous terrain with limited access to civilized amenities. Yet these do not keep me from being one with you who are committed to uphold the dignity of our fellow human beings. I will give a face to enforce its appearance. My son Jonas Burgos, who was disappeared by state forces in April 28, 2007, remains to be missing 13 years after. But enforced disappearances do not happen in isolation or in a vacuum. They are part of a context, small and big. And in this case, the context of Jonas's work, his family, and the community served, and the bigger community, which is the government, the military, the economic situation, etc., prevailing in the Philippines. Jonas's personal context. Jonas at the time of abduction was 37, a third of 5 siblings, a husband, and a father to 1 girl. He is a son of a crusading press freedom fighter, Jose G. Burgos Jr., who was recognized by the International Press Institute as a world press freedom hero for fighting the dictatorship in the Philippines for press freedom. For this, the family is regarded with respect by rights defenders. But Jonas was also a member of an organization of farmers. Having finished agriculture in college, he was the manager of our 12-hectare farm and trained farmers on farming methods, and also organized them to teach them their rights, especially rights related to the lands that they have tilled for generations. When he was abducted, he was alone in a restaurant in a big mall in Quezon City, having lunch, and was unarmed. Witnesses testified in court that they saw 4 burly men and a woman take him forcibly and dragged him into a waiting van outside the mall. The car plate of the van led us to a military camp, who at that time had possession of the car plate, it being involved in an illegal logging case. So we brought the case to the Commission on Human Rights and the Supreme Court, filing petitions for the writ of habeas corpus and amparo. we were hoping that we would be able to recover Jonas with all the evidences which we presented. After doggedly pursuing the case for more than 7 years, we finally got a favorable decision. Through the help of the CHR, who produced the pieces of evidence and witnesses and presented this to the Supreme Court declared that, number one, indeed, the case of Jonas was an enforced disappearance case. Second, that the Philippine Army of the Armed Forces of the Philippines is responsible for the abduction. Third, that Harry Balyaga Jr., a colonel at the time of the abduction, et al. Are accountable for the disappearance of Jonas. And the writ of amparo was granted to me and the family in aid of recovering Jonas. The Philippine Army was also ordered to surface Jonas and return him to his family at whatever state Jonas was in. That decision gave birth to a criminal case of kidnapping and illegal detention filed against Harry Balyaga et al. In a regional trial court. But after 4 years of hearing of the case, the court dismissed the case and saw no cause to find Balyaga guilty, citing insufficient proof. And that is in spite of an incident in the Supreme Court where Balyaga was identified in court by a witness as the man who led the abducting team. Meanwhile, the tenacity of the family in searching for justice for Jonas has earned the ire of the military and state forces. Continued harassment and red tagging is the daily fare of the Burgos family and the friends of the supporters of the family. Right now, I myself, including 10 others, are subject of a case of perjury filed by the head of the National Security Council, Hermogenes Esperon. It is funny that the same guy accuses me of lying, perjury, and he was the one who withheld the Provost Marshal report, which should have been instrumental in our finding Jonas, and in court he denied that he had the report with him. Now, we are being threatened that we can be arrested anytime and put to jail, especially that the anti-terrorism bill has been signed into law just this July 2020. To this date, 4 years after the Supreme Court ordered the return of Jonas, he remains to be missing, and no one has been cited in contempt, even if we filed a petition to file in contempt the officers who did not comply with the Supreme Court order. Not getting any results from local remedies, we brought Jonas's case to the United Nations Working Group for Enforced and Involuntary Disappearance in 2008, where I was privileged to give an oral intervention before the plenary body. Just last month, July 2020, we received a response from Mr. Luciano Hazan, Chair Rapporteur of the Brigade, whom I understand is right now with us in this webinar. And we were informed that the UN Brigade was monitoring the case, and we are very happy that we received this communication from Brigade. Meanwhile, parallel, non-legal means were employed through media, representations with people in government, pleas of support from church groups and non-governmental organizations, particularly rights organizations, and we conducted campaigns so that Jonas and the other disappeared in the Philippines would not be forgotten. With all the various initiatives and coverages and the support of the media, Jonas is now the poster boy of enforced disappearance in the Philippines. Now let us look at the Philippine context. as it was before during the presidency of Gloria Arroyo when the abduction took place. As it is now, the human rights situation in the Philippines remains almost the same, if not worse. The culture of impunity continues. Perpetrators of human rights violations are not held accountable. Worse, violence against human rights defenders is abetted by the top leadership itself. The fight against terrorism and drugs are used to justify illegal arrests, extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, and all sorts of human rights violations. I have so many figures here, data, on these violations, but that would probably bore you. Suffice it to say that, just one example, on the drug war, official records say that more than 5,000 were killed, and these are extrajudicial killings in aid of the drug war. But the NGOs and other research groups claim that more than 26,000 killings happened. The rights watchdog Karapatan has also recorded victims of frustrated extrajudicial killings, more than 3,000 illegal arrests on top of the thousands arrested in the enforcement of militarized lockdowns all over the country. More than 200 were tortured, more than 800 were victims of illegal search and seizure, and more than 456,000 were victims of forcible evacuations. Instead of releasing political prisoners on humanitarian and just grounds in the context of the pandemic, several more have been arrested and jailed. We have 635 political prisoners incarcerated in various facilities. At least 95 of them have various ailments, including life-threatening diseases. 53 are elderly, and 100 are women. More enforced disappearance victims are being recorded. From 2016 to April 2020, 13 ED victims were recorded. But of course, we know that the number is bigger because most families refuse to submit facts about their disappeared for fear of reprisal. After the uproar against extrajudicial killings, victimizing mostly the poor, not only adults, but children as well, enforced disappearance seems to be the next strategy being used in the drug war. Just very recently, last June 14, Elena Tijamo, the farmer group coordinator of the Farmers Development Center, Cebu, was abducted by armed men. To date, Tijamo remains to be missing. Another government initiative targeting enforced disappearance victims and families, in February 2019, senior officials led by Undersecretary Catura of the Presidential Human Rights Committee formally moved to the list 625 cases of enforced and involuntary disappearances, mostly attributed to government forces between 1975 and 2012, during a meeting with the UN body in Sarajevo, capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It justified the action by saying that the government had already put in place a strong legal framework and institutional mechanisms to address this issue. But on the record, not a single case of enforced disappearance has been solved to the point of the victim being returned and justice being given to the victim and the family. The Free Jonas Burgos movement said that this proposed delisting is an insult. It is disrespectful, totally disregarding and dismissing the suffering of the families of all the missing. It is an attack against all of us who continue to be uncertain about the fate and whereabouts of our relatives. Then last August 10 and 17, yet another blow to the rights community happened in the killing of Randall Etchanis, a 72-year-old peace and agrarian reform advocate. He was killed in cold blood. The report says that he was already weak and sick, and he was in the city for medical treatment, but he was tortured before he was killed. On the day that Randall was buried, another human rights defender was assassinated. The rights group Karapatan officer in Bacolod, Zara Alvarez, 39 years old, was shot dead on August 17 as she was on her way to buy food for dinner. Zara was not only a human rights defender, but a well-loved educator, a paralegal activist, and a church worker. According to the bishop of their diocese, Sarah received threats but chose to stay and serve her province. The killing of Alvarez and other political activists in the country came after multiple threats and pronouncements by President Rodrigo Duterte against human rights defenders and critics. Alvarez is the 13th worker of the human rights group Karapatan slain under the Duterte administration. The specter darkens all the more with the signing into law of the Anti-Terrorism Law, RA 11479, this June 9. The Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 has provisions which are unconstitutional according to the lawmakers and experts, because it has these provisions, among others, a vague definition of who a terrorist is, and assigning this task of determining who a terrorist is not to the courts, but to a committee composed of individuals appointed by the president. Arrests without warrants, detention of arrested persons on mere suspicion that they are terrorists, detention of persons for 24 days without filing a case against him, and this can be extended to 30 days. Inaccessibility of detained persons by lawyers or relatives, and a sentence of lifetime imprisonment for persons who are declared terrorists. As of today, there are 28 petitions pending in the Supreme Court for a temporary restraining order on the act. The Supreme Court still has to rule on these petitions. But with the government institutions all under the control of the executive department, with ex-military men appointed as their heads, we have little hope that the petitions will be acted on in favor of the petitioners, the people, and the country. And yet there are small and big victories. Yes, there are glimmers of hope in the Philippines. The first of which is the signing into law of the Anti-Enforced or Involuntary Disappearance Act, RA 10353, by the then President Benigno Aquino III in 2012. RA 10353 imposed the penalty of reclusion perpetua or life imprisonment on persons who directly committed, directly forced, encouraged, or induced others to commit the act, and who cooperated in the act by other actions. But then again, implementation of the act is practically nil. And the main reason is basically the ignorance of the implementers of the nuances, nature, and the character of enforced disappearance. Second source of light was in March 2014, marking a breakthrough by the decision of the Supreme Court granting the writ of amparo in the case of Jonas Burgos. In the history of enforced disappearances in the Philippines, to our knowledge, this is the first case that has reached the Supreme Court without being quashed, and that has obtained a favorable disposition. However, from the voice of this mother, we won the battle, but we lost the war. The decision was favorable, but my son has not been returned to us. Then in September 2018, another source of light was a decision by Regional Trial Court Branch 15 finding General Jovito Palparan of the Philippine Army and 2 other officers guilty of kidnapping and illegal detention of 2 UP students who were disappeared in June 6, 2006. Right now, Palparan is now serving his sentence, but there is a pending appeal still in the National Penitentiary. But unverified reports say that inside the penitentiary, Palparan stays in a separate building cum bungalow with the amenities of home. It is also a source of hope that the UN Brigade monitors
Eileen, I think that Edith have a problem with internet.
Hello. Yes. I think she has internet connection problem. I also have internet connection, but I have read her presentation and she was concluding. She was already concluding.
Eileen, I am in.
Okay.
Just last,
Yes.
to conclude, with our hands linked together, we present a stronger front to resist all kinds of oppression, especially that of enforced disappearance. Let me quote Psalm 57, 9-10. They have laid a snare for my steps. My soul was bowed down. They dug a pit in my path, but fell in it themselves. Thus I pray, my heart is ready, O God, my heart is ready, and I will stay to continue the fight. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Mrs. Burgos, for the very touching presentation about the disappearance of Jonas and connecting it with the overall human rights situation of the Philippines, especially during this time of pandemic. Now, we would like to proceed to the next speaker. The next speaker is Marco Antonio Garavito Fernandez. He is the director of the Liga Guatemalteca de Higiene Mental that is looking for disappeared children. La Liga Guatemalteca de Higiene Mental están buscando niños desaparecidos y han encontrado más de 500 personas, de 500 niñas desaparecidas que han reunificado con sus padres biológicas. Ahora queremos escuchar a Marco sobre la situación de desapariciones forzadas en Guatemala y de la situación de derechos humanos en Guatemala. Y después, Andrea va a traducir. Andrea is going to translate it later. Thank you. Now, Marco, you have the floor. Tienes la palabra, Marco.
Gracias, Aileen. Un abrazo solidario para todos ustedes desde Guatemala. Y estoy muy contento de estar en este evento, por verles, por compartir, pero sobre todo porque quiero hablar a nombre de miles y miles de desaparecidos en Guatemala. Gracias, Andrea, por tu traducción. La lucha por los desaparecidos no se detendrá. El año 2020 encuentra a la humanidad en un momento difícil de su historia. De manera que no es correcto empezar esta ponencia sin manifestar mi solidaridad con las familias que están sufriendo en el mundo, particularmente para las que habitan en países como el nuestro, Guatemala, donde las erráticas políticas de los gobernantes hacen más difícil este momento para millones de personas.
The struggle for the disappeared will not stop. The year 2020 is a difficult time in the history of humanity. So it is not right to begin this presentation without expressing my solidarity with the families that are suffering in the world, particularly those who live in countries like ours, Guatemala, where the erratic policies of the politicians make this time even more difficult for millions of people.
El coronavirus ha permitido evidenciar con mayor crudeza la desigualdad y el abandono en que viven inmensos segmentos de población ante la indiferencia de sus gobiernos. También ha desnudado la necesidad de que el mundo funcione más basado en la igualdad, en el humanismo, en la solidaridad y no en el afán de lucro, el negocio y la acumulación de riqueza de pequeños sectores a costa del sudor, del sufrimiento y hasta la muerte de la población en pobreza.
The coronavirus has demonstrated evidence of the stark inequality and neglect in which huge segments of the population live, in the face of the indifference of their governments. It has also exposed the need for the world to function based more on equality, humanism, and solidarity, not on the desire for profit and the accumulation of wealth by small sectors at the expense of the sweat, suffering, and even death of those living in poverty.
Esta situación de la pandemia no debe ser un elemento que oculte otros temas importantes. Dentro de ellos, la situación de los desaparecidos, así como la lucha que sin descanso llevan adelante sus familias en la búsqueda de saber la verdad y de buscar justicia. Es por ello que la consigna que guía este evento de la ICAED se orienta cabalmente en esa idea, al afirmar que el coronavirus no va a durar toda la vida, pero la búsqueda de los desaparecidos sí, o hasta encontrarlos.
This pandemic should not be a way to hide other important issues, such as the situation of the disappeared and the tireless struggle that their families relentlessly carry out, searching for truth and justice. That's why the slogan that guides this ICAED event focuses on the idea, the coronavirus will not last a lifetime, but the search for the missing will, or it will last until we can find them.
En ese sentido, este 30 de agosto del año 2020 es una fecha oportuna para evidenciar la situación en que se encuentran las familias que por responsabilidad del Estado sufren por la ausencia de sus seres queridos. En Guatemala, no obstante lo pequeño de su territorio y su relativa población, esa situación es complicada, pues aún estamos viviendo los efectos de un conflicto armado interno que dejó cerca de 250,000 muertos y más de 45,000 personas desaparecidas.
This day in August 2020 is an opportunity to highlight the situation of the disappeared. Due to the failure of the state, families of the disappeared are suffering because of the absence of their loved ones. In Guatemala, even though we are a small country with a small population, this situation is complicated because we are still experiencing the effects of an internal armed conflict that left about 250,000 people dead and 45,000 missing.
Luego de la firma de los acuerdos de paz en el año de 1996, asumimos que el fin de la guerra permitiría empezar a construir un país con paz, con democracia, con bienestar y con justicia. Teníamos la esperanza puestas en la agenda de los acuerdos de paz y que de alguna manera constituían la hoja de ruta del camino hacia un mejor futuro.
After the signing of the peace agreement in 1996, we assumed that the end of the war would allow us to begin to build a peaceful, democratic country based on the well-being of the people and justice. We were hopeful that in some way the peace agreement would constitute the road to a better future.
24 años después de la firma de la paz, los sectores del poder económico, político y militar que llevaron la guerra contra el pueblo han retomado el control total del Estado y hacen esfuerzos por echar a la basura los acuerdos firmados. Un gobierno tras otro, hasta llegar al actual, fueron violando sistemáticamente los acuerdos que permitirían a las víctimas tener mecanismos institucionales para saber la verdad sobre sus familiares, encontrar diversos mecanismos de reparación a su sufrimiento y, sobre todo, que la justicia pudiera sancionar a quienes cometieron crímenes de lesa humanidad y hasta genocidio en el caso de Guatemala.
24 years after the peace accord was signed, the economic, political, and military forces responsible for the long civil war against the Guatemalan people again control the country and are discarding the peace accord itself. One government after another, including the present one, has systematically violated agreements that were incorporated into the peace accord that was supposed to set up institutions so people could find out the truth about what happened to their relatives, so they could find ways to receive reparations for their suffering, and above all, ensure that justice would be done by punishing those who committed crimes against humanity and even genocide in Guatemala.
Así, los acuerdos de paz dieron vida a procesos institucionales orientados a favorecer a las víctimas y en particular a quienes fueron sujetos de desapariciones. Aunque en un principio se pudo avanzar, sirva este foro para denunciar cómo esos procesos han sido revertidos sistemáticamente y la lucha de las víctimas encuentran cada vez respuestas más agresivas desde los órganos de gobierno existentes para satisfacer esas demandas.
The peace agreement was supposed to develop procedures to support the victims of the Civil War, especially the relatives of people who had disappeared. At first, there was some progress, but no longer. Please use this forum to denounce how these processes have been systematically reversed. Every time the victims struggle, the government agencies that are supposed to satisfy the victims' demands become more aggressive in their refusal to satisfy these demands.
Los gobiernos trazaron una ruta para desmantelar esos logros alcanzados con la firma de la paz. Los últimos se han dado ya en apenas 7 meses del actual gobierno de Alejandro Yamatei, quien, aprovechando las restricciones impuestas por la cuarentena, toques de queda, estados de sitio y de calamidad por el COVID-19, ha suprimido las últimas instancias que quedaban para beneficio de las víctimas de la guerra.
Successive governments of Guatemala have charted a path to dismantle the achievements of the war victims and the disappearances. The current government of Alejandro Yamatei has already taken advantage of restrictions imposed during the coronavirus quarantine, like curfews, the siege, and the calamity of COVID-19, by removing the only benefits that remain for the victims of war.
Así, elimina el Programa Nacional de Resarcimiento, la Secretaría de la Paz, la Comisión Presidencial de Derechos Humanos, la Secretaría de la Mujer, entre otros. A cambio, intenta formalizar una Comisión Presidencial de Derechos Humanos y que encabeza el mismo presidente y algunos de sus ministros. Es evidente que la medida solo tiene una intención: bloquear la lucha de los familiares por saber la verdad y exigir justicia. Asimismo, hay intentos desde un sistema de justicia cooptado de buscar por todos los medios posibles de liberar de prisión a los responsables de crímenes de lesa humanidad que desde la heroica lucha de las víctimas permitió llevarlos a prisión para que den cuenta de su accionar en contra del pueblo en los años previos.
Thus, the government has eliminated one of the national programs, the Secretary of Peace, the Presidential Commission on Human Rights, the Secretary of Women, among others. In return, this government has attempted to establish a Presidential Human Rights Commission headed by the President and some of his own ministers. It's clear that this effort has only one intention: to block the struggle of family members of the disappeared who want to learn the truth and who demand justice. Likewise, this government is seeking by all means possible to release from prison those who were in prison because of their crimes against humanity. The heroic struggle of the victims is what led to the imprisonment of these perpetrators.
De manera, queridos amigos y amigas, Guatemala vive un momento muy difícil. Fuerzas oscuras del poder económico, político y militar intentan llevarnos de vuelta a un pasado que pensamos que ya estaba superado. Necesitamos la solidaridad de ustedes para evitar que nuevos derramamientos de sangre y desapariciones sean parte de la vida cotidiana en nuestro país.
So, dear friends, Guatemala is living during a very difficult time. Dark forces of economic, political, and military power are trying to take us back to a past that we thought we had already overcome. We need your solidarity to prevent further bloodshed and disappearances from becoming part of everyday life in Guatemala again.
Tristemente, esto ya ha empezado. Decenas de líderes comunitarios que están en defensa de la vida y la tierra han sido asesinados. Se multiplican las amenazas e intimidaciones frente a las personas y sectores que demandan sus derechos ciudadanos consignados en la Constitución Política del país. A la vez, el organismo legislativo, también cooptado por estas fuerzas, se ha negado sistemáticamente a aprobar la Ley 3590, que permitiría crear y fortalecer una comisión para la búsqueda de personas desaparecidas por la guerra.
Sadly, this has already begun. Dozens of community leaders who are trying to defend their lives and their land have been killed. Threats and intimidation against individuals and sectors demanding their rights according to the Constitution have been multiplying. At the same time, the legislature, which has been co-opted by these forces, has refused to pass Law 3590, which would create and strengthen a commission to search for people who have been missing.
Este mismo Congreso se ha negado a conocer y ratificar la Convención Internacional contra la Desaparición Forzada, a pesar de que Guatemala se comprometió a ello cuando firmó su aprobación en la Asamblea de las Naciones Unidas en el año 2006. Ambas iniciativas de las víctimas están simplemente engavetadas y no hay ninguna esperanza de que en el futuro cercano sean sancionadas.
The same Congress has refused to ratify the International Convention Against Enforced Disappearances, even though Guatemala approved the convention at the United Nations Assembly in 2006. Both of these initiatives to support victims of disappearances are being subverted, and we have no hope for what will happen in the future.
La lucha de las víctimas de desaparecidos en medio de problemas y de obstáculos continúa también en países cercanos. En El Salvador específicamente, y luego de 12 años de guerra, al firmarse la paz, la Comisión de la Verdad presentó su informe de la locura a la esperanza. Esta esperanza por la verdad y la justicia se vio frustrada cuando 5 días después que se presenta el informe, se decreta una amplia y absoluta ley de amnistía que ha impedido hasta la fecha investigar, enjuiciar y sancionar a los responsables de crímenes de lesa humanidad y crímenes de guerra.
The struggle of victims of missing persons amid problems and obstacles continues also in nearby countries. In El Salvador specifically, after 12 years of war, there was a peace agreement that was signed. Then the Truth Commission presented its report entitled From Madness to Hope. This hope for truth and justice was thwarted after the report was presented. What happened was that a broad and absolute amnesty law was passed preventing the investigation, prosecution, and punishment of people responsible for the crimes against humanity in El Salvador and for war crimes.
De manera que las víctimas de casi 75,000 muertos y más de 10,000 desaparecidos han visto por años frustradas sus luchas. A pesar de que muchos años después esa ley de amnistía fue derogada y se ordenó al Estado salvadoreño promulgar una nueva ley para la reconciliación con participación de las víctimas, esto no ha sido posible.
The victims of nearly 75,000 deaths and more than 10,000 missing people have seen their struggles thwarted. Many years later, the Salvadoran government has now proposed a new law for reconciliation with the participation of the victims, but we don't see that this new law is going to be implemented.
No obstante que en el camino se ha logrado crear la Comisión Nacional de Búsqueda de Niños y Niñas Desaparecidos, CNB, y la Comisión Nacional de Búsqueda de Personas Adultas Desaparecidas, CONABúsqueda, los logros de ambas comisiones no han llenado las expectativas de las víctimas respecto a sus demandas de verdad y de justicia.
Despite the creation of the National Commission for the Search for Missing Children and the National Commission for the Search for Missing Adults, the achievements of both these committees have not met the expectations of the victims regarding the victims' demands for truth and justice.
Esto llevó a que en agosto del 2019, la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos hiciera una visita a El Salvador, dejando un informe donde recomienda al Estado aprobar una ley de reconciliación tal como lo fijara la Sala de Justicia, así como también declarar inadmisible que se dé la prescripción de los crímenes de guerra y lesa humanidad, tal como se pretendía desde la ley de amnistía, aprobada luego de firmarse los acuerdos de paz.
This led the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to visit El Salvador in August 2019, and they wrote a report that recommended that the government pass a reconciliation act declaring, En
resumen, la lucha de las víctimas de desaparición forzada en nuestros países se mantiene en un camino cuesta arriba. Mientras los responsables de esos crímenes continúen en el control del Estado, tanto en lo político, en lo económico y en lo militar, hay que redoblar esfuerzos de trabajo y fortalecer espacios que, como este, contribuyan a la eterna solidaridad con los más necesitados, con los más sufridos o con los más olvidados.
To conclude, the struggle of victims of enforced disappearances in our country continues on its path. As long as those responsible for these crimes continue to control the state, both the political, economic, and military aspects, we must redouble our work to strengthen the spaces like this conference right here today, which contribute to internal solidarity with those most in need, with those who are suffering, and with those who have been forgotten.
Confío en que esto lo podremos seguir haciendo, no solo manteniendo, sino fortaleciendo para bien de aquellos que han sido víctimas a sus derechos fundamentales y, en primer lugar, a la vida de sus familiares desaparecidos.
I am confident that we will continue this not only by maintaining, but by strengthening the movement for the good of the victims whose fundamental rights have been violated and for their missing relatives.
Por eso decimos desaparecidos nunca más.
This is why
Gracias.
This is why we say disappeared never again. Thank you very much.
Y un gran abrazo desde Guatemala. Gracias, Andrea, por la traducción.
Thank you very much, Marco, for the very insightful presentation about the difficult situation in Guatemala. Muchas gracias, Marco, por la presentación sobre la situación difícil de Guatemala, que tiene 45,000 desaparecidos, un país con poca población, con pequeña población, pero tiene muchos desaparecidos, 45,000. y muchas gracias por el trabajo, por buscar a los niños desaparecidos. Más de 500 niños que están reunificados con sus padres. Es un buen trabajo. Ahora, now we would like to call on our next speaker. He is a member of the Committee on Enforced Disappearances. He is from Argentina, from a country which also suffered a lot of cases of disappearances during the dictatorship, as our former speaker earlier mentioned. Now, without much ado, I would like to call on Mr. Horacio Ravena to speak about the challenges and the ways forward. Horacio, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eileen. I hope to be brief in attention the hour. Dear colleagues, it is time for celebration. After many years, ICAED is recognized and will have its office in Geneva, headquarters of the UN. I thank my friend Eileen, who has honored me with this invitation. I greet all colleagues, especially those with whom we have come together since the drafting of the convention, and we are part of the founding group of our international coalition. I especially greeting to the brilliant young man, dear compatriot, and today ICAED Secretary General, Rodrigo. I'm proud to be part of this panel with my cordial greetings to all the speakers, and I highlight the presence of Stella Carlotto, an ethical reference in the history of struggle of the Argentine human rights organizations. I highlight too the presence of my chair and brother, Mohamed Ayat, with whom I am united by a history of shared ideals. I pay tribute to three dear colleagues who are no longer present today and were fundamental in the adoption of the International Convention, to Alfredo Galetti, who was one of the authors of the first draft of the convention that was presented on the Paris Colloquium, Patricio Rice, co-founder of FEDEFAM, first focal point of ICAED, and Munir Said Talib, former president of AFAD, who was assassinated while traveling to Geneva to participate in one of the drafting meetings of the convention. On the fringes of horror, enforced disappearances has a prominent place. It denigrates the human condition of the victims and the perpetrators. It seeks to deny even the existence of the disappeared persons. It is the terror of denying life. Since the 1981 Paris Colloquium, it took 13 years for the Inter-American system to adopt the American Convention, and it took 29 years for the international community to adopt the International Convention. The United Nations echoed a claim from FEDEFAM and declared August 30 as the International Day of Victims of Enforced Disappearances. The Inter-American Convention on Forced Disappearances of Persons was adopted in Belém do Pará, Brazil, on June 9, 1994, and the International Convention in 2006. It is noteworthy that the figure of enforced disappearances require that the author or authors be agent of the state, as established by the Inter-American and the International Convention Against Enforced Disappearances. For its part, the Rome Statute in Article 7.2, paragraph I, define the enforced disappearances with the same elements provided for the International and the Inter-American Convention. Although it introduced a difference that after the meaning of the figure that alters, I beg your pardon, that alters the meaning of the figure, considering a political organization as a potential author of disappearances. Some authors argue that the term refers to organizations that are not part of a state, but that have similar characteristics, namely those that are framed within the additional protocols 1 and 2 of the Geneva Convention of 1949. Other authors maintain that with this wording, an attempt was made to incorporate entities as responsibly for this crime non-state. Anyway, it's a problem that we must pay attention. Advances of our international convention. The committee's work incorporates important advances in the protection mechanism. An innovation is the ability to receive urgent communications. The committee can examine any petition submitted in order to search and locate a missing person in a state party. If the committee considers it necessary, it will request the state party to provide information on the situation of the persons within a prescribed period, or to adopt the necessary precautionary measures in order to avoid irreparable damage. Finally, in accordance with Article 33, it can visit in situ, and with Article 34, if there is information that enforced disappearances is practiced in a generalized or systematic way, it can notify the General Assembly through the Secretary General of the United Nations. It also established a broad concept of victim. Victim is understood to be the disappeared person and any individual who has suffered harm as the direct result of an enforced disappearance. It widens the concept of direct family members to include anyone who has suffered damage in some way as a result of the disappearance. The search in times of COVID and the effect on our committee. With reference to the influence of COVID in the fight against enforced disappearances, I consider that the measures taken by the countries in the fight against the pandemic do not seem to have the objective of restricting public freedoms, but rather to take health measures that they consider appropriate to protect the right to health of the whole of society. More problems present to the international community than the anti-quarantine campaign and the denial of the importance of finding a vaccine that could definitively overcome the pandemic. Facing the great crisis brought by the health situation that the world is going through, the famines and economic bankruptcies that will surely mark the return to normality, perhaps a positive consequence that will be appreciated in the future would be that it is reflected in the universal conscience that the right to health is a collective and assimilable to the inalienable right to life, liberty, and economic and social development. In the committee, we have been able to develop the sessions where we deal with a limited agenda that includes the follow-up of the most delicate cases, the analysis of the situation of the urgent actions, and a public dialogue with the state parties and the civil society. This issue was seriously incorporated by the CID, which in the state parties' list of issues included specific questions asking whether the state plans to specifically prohibit in national legislation the invocation of exceptional circumstances as a justification of forced disappearances. Also, the state parties were asked to provide information on the measures taken during the COVID-19 pandemic to ensure that the policies and action of the state party are in conformity with its obligation under the convention. The significance of this crime unfolds the search for alternative ways to continue the search even under the restriction of the pandemic. I call everyone to continue searching yesterday's and today's disappearances. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, Horacio, for that informative presentation on the Committee on Enforced Disappearances. It's already 12 midnight in the Philippines. We have booked this conference for 2 hours. It's also 12 noon in Washington, D.C. and
Eileen, we can continue.
1 o'clock in
It's
the
not,
afternoon in Argentina.
Eileen, it's not going to kick us
Yes.
off. We won't get kicked off.
Yes, so there's a suggestion actually to close the meeting, but if there are very important questions, we can listen. I have checked the chat room. There actually are no questions, but there are many comments from different participants from several countries. And perhaps there are some sharings here. I would like to perhaps give opportunity to 2 or maximum of 3 people to talk if they want, because I cannot summarize anything here because there are no questions from the chat room. Somebody would like to talk? So I think that it has been 2 hours. It's been quite long, and it's a very, very difficult issue. It's a difficult topic of enforced disappearance. It's very dark. So I believe that we just have to conclude the meeting according to the speakers in the respective countries. Enforced disappearances are happening in different contexts, in the context of dictatorship, in the context of, in the Philippines, the war on drugs at this moment. It's a global phenomenon. It's happening in different regions, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in Europe. We were supposed to have a speaker from Belarus, but she has a problem. She has urgent emergency situation in Belarus that she cannot come. The fact that we still have the working group on enforced or involuntary disappearances. By the way, we have the chair of the working group with us, Mr. Luciano Hassan. He is present with us, and he shared with us a press statement for the Day of the Disappeared on the 30th of August. The fact that the working group still exists means that the struggle against enforced disappearances should continue. As Marco Garavito said, that the COVID-19 will not last for a lifetime. Hopefully sooner than later, it will last. But the struggle against enforced disappearances will continue. So on the mandate of the International Coalition Against Enforced Disappearances, we are campaigning for the universal ratification and implementation of the Convention Against Enforced Disappearances, which to this date has been signed by 63 states and ratified by 63 states and signed by 98. So there's much to do to achieve universal ratification and implementation considering the global magnitude of the crime. So as a conclusion, I would like to thank all our speakers from different regions of the world, from the United Nations, all our participants from several countries. There were more than 90 before we started, but some people were kicked out. I also apologize for what happened. It's a lesson for us to ensure security at our next events. So I would like to thank everyone for their participation. Enforced disappearance is not just an issue of the family of the victim, it's an issue of the whole society, it's an issue of the world. Therefore, let us continue to struggle against enforced disappearances until victory. Hasta la victoria siempre. Muchísimas gracias. Muchas gracias for everything. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye from
Bye.
Washington, D.C.
Compañeros.
Thank you, gracias,
Yeah.
adiós.
Adiós a todos.
Gracias, adiós, saludos a todos y a todas.
Thank you, Andrea.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
In July 2019, the United Nations, foreign countries, and international human rights organizations began paying more attention to enforced disappearances in Libya.